Good morning. My name's Teresa. I'm a National Disability Coordination Officer, and we'll tell you a little bit more about what that means shortly. Welcome to our booth. We're going to be joined by a couple of awesome, amazing speakers who are going to share some fantastic strategies with students later on. But first I'll hand over to my colleague Ben, who's just going to explain a little bit more about who the NDCOs are, and then I'll be back to tell you a little bit more about USEP.
Thanks, Teresa. So Ben here. Hello, people. How are we going? So the NDCO program. I'll try and break that down straight away because we'll use acronyms like a lot of businesses do. So it's a National Disability Coordination Officer, and I'll just tell you from experience, a lot of people confuse us with the NDIS. Similar acronym and same amount of letters there. So we are quite different to the NDIS. We do, being in the disability sector, we do work alongside NDIS programs at times. But what the NDCO program essentially is an Australian government initiative to drive change so that people with disability have equitable opportunity to access, participate, and achieve the goals in tertiary education. So it's an Australian government initiative. So it's run by DESI, which is the Department of Education, but the national body, not the DESBIT, which is the Queensland variation of the education. So we work strategically with stakeholders, and we've got a couple of our brilliant stakeholders with us today that we do work with. And this is a really good example of people we do work with to identify gaps and barriers, which is a big part of our role. Develop or identify and share best practices, escalate and advocate. So there's some areas that we've really focused on, and our focus has changed a little bit from working on a regional territorial level to more of a strategic national level. So we look more at systemic issues and barriers across the nation, basically. So there's 31 of us. We've all got a different, what we call host employer. So mine, for example, is Busy at Work, and Teresa's is TAFE Queensland. So that's just an example, and they've done that deliberately. So mine's more of a traineeship, apprenticeship centre, and they do that so that there's a broad blend of NDCOs across a lot of different industries. So you'll see quite a few work at universities, or work under the university as the host. So the reason they do that, as I said, is just to make sure there's a blend and that we all have different knowledge coming into this NDCO, and it works quite well at levels. It's also can be a challenge, which is understandable, but it certainly does work well in the fact that we've all got different knowledge and different ways of looking at things. So there's a wide range of resources available, and we'll try and share some of those with you. Well, we certainly will share some with you today, and there will be some in the chat areas. Just so you know, if there is any issues or you can't pick them up well, let us know. We'll be more than happy to email them out to you, all the resources afterwards. Alrighty, so the Australian government recognises that people with disability face challenges navigating through the maze of education, training options and support services. So that's a big part of our role, is to provide linkages where we see that there are a breakdown there, have varying levels of knowledge about support of people with disability from education, training and employment sectors. So we see that a lot too. Some obviously tertiary education, for example, a training organisation may have a huge amount of disability knowledge in some area, but not in other areas, and some may have it in really specialised because they've dealt with people with certain disabilities. So it's just something we see recurring, and even in the employment sectors, certainly a big issue as well. We're still really underrepresented in tertiary education and employment. So you see that people with disability, and that's a big focus, as people would probably know, what the NDIS is getting people into economic participation, basically. So it's something we're really focused on, because, you know, particularly in university, but also in other tertiary centres, you see that really is underrepresented people with disability. So we really try and focus on that. So some of the initiatives the NDCOs are involved with, this is definitely not exclusively, where there's a lot of things NDCOs are involved with, but things probably that are related to today and some of the talks we're going to talk about. So we've got the TSEP, which is the, we'll be talking about USEP, which is the University Specialist Employment Pathways. TSEP is basically the TAFE version of that, the tertiary version of that. So disability awareness training, disclosure, it's a personal choice. So that's some of the stuff we're talking about. Now I'll hand it back to Teresa to talk about USEP, which is one of our main focuses for today.
Thanks, Ben. So I've shared some links to some resources in the chat there, different websites, etc., including the website that we have set up for the USEP. So it's the University Specialist Employment Partnership. So there's a range of partnerships nationally. So these are facilitated by the NDCOs, and all of the hard work is done by the universities and the DES providers. So we're lucky to have one of the consultants with us today, so you can find out a lot more about exactly what they do. So the focus for USEP is on assisting graduates with disability to access employment relating to what they're studying. So traditionally, a lot of people who live with disability, who complete university training, aren't able to gain employment relating to what they studied. So they end up not being able to use their qualifications, and all their hard works can sometimes feel wasted. So this was about putting a disability expert who has specialist knowledge around gaining employment with a university qualification when you're living with disability to guide you. So it's someone who can walk hand in hand with you and build your capacity so that at some point you're obviously able to walk on your own. So we've got a range of different partnerships nationally and look at ways of making those partnerships work at a local level. So these consultants are highly experienced and they're very focused on helping you in a way that you need. So they look at what opportunities you can access while you're still at university. So once you hit your final year, make sure that you have a chat with your local university to see if they do have a USEP partnership. There are GradWise and other similar programs that might be able to support you. And it's best not to leave it until you've finished. If you can start accessing opportunities while you're still at uni, that's proven to really increase your chances of gaining employment that suits you. And it's not always easy to know exactly how to do that. So that's why we ask a specialist. The same way you get a plumber to come and fix your pipes, you want somebody with that specialist knowledge of employment to tell you exactly, you know, which pipes need twisting and replacing, etc. So that's what we're aiming to do with USEP. So generally, the consultant will be employed by one of the disability employment service providers. So they've got a whole range of other staff based with those service providers that can support them as well and help identify opportunities. Always looking for feedback and other opportunities to get involved to fill those gaps and barriers. So they will work very closely with the other careers advisors and student support services within the universities as well. So you've got access to a whole range of different services that can support you gaining employment.